The market was alive with noise, 1,000 voices shouting at once, strange tongues mixing in the air like smoke. Creatures of all shapes and sizes moved between cages and stalls, their eyes glowing, their scales shining, their claws scraping. The ground, above the market, black banners hung, fluttering in a hot and heavy wind. The smell of oil, smoke, and fear pressed down on everything. In the middle of this chaos stood a small cage, and inside the cage stood a girl. Her skin was pale silver, her hair long but tangled, her body thin from hunger. She wore nothing, no cloth, no jewelry. Nothing to hide her shame. The crowd around her pointed and laughed. "Their voice is cruel. No one will buy this one alien said, his mouth full of sharp teeth. "She is useless." Another hissed, "Too weak, too broken." The girl kept her head low, her hands clutching the bars, but her eyes, when she lifted them, were not broken. There was fear. Yes, but also something else. A fire, small but burning. A will that refused to die. The slave trader who owned the cage shouted to the crowd, "Look here, a rare prize, the last of her kind." But no one moved forward. No one raised an offer. The trader's face twisted with anger. He slammed the bars with his whip, and sparks of light jumped in the air. "Someone must want her," he growled. "She cannot just stand here forever." The girl flinched but did not cry out. Her silence made the aliens laugh even more. What good is a slave who does not beg? They mocked. What use is one who has no shame? The sun burned high above the market, but still no buyer came. The girl stood, her legs shaking, her lips dry. She thought maybe she would die here, left to rot in the cage, forgotten. Her race was gone, destroyed in war, her people scattered like dust. She was the last. And she was alone. But then the market changed. It began as silence. A strange silence that spread through the crowd. The laughter stopped, the shouting slowed. Eyes turned, whispers rose. A human. Someone whispered, "There is a human." Here, from the edge of the market, he walked forward, tall, broad-shouldered. His skin bronze, his hair dark. He wore simple clothes, a travel coat of leather, boots coated with dust. At his side hung a weapon. Strange and sharp, but he did not touch it. His eyes were calm, but they carried a weight that made even the loudest traders fall silent. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy, strange, dangerous, unpredictable. Most had never seen one with their own eyes, and here was one, walking slowly through the market of shadows. Every step echoed louder than the chaos around him. The human stopped in front of the girl's cage. His eyes did not laugh, did not mock. He looked at her as if she were not broken, not worthless. He studied her, silent, while the crowd leaned closer. The trader's voice broke the silence, eager. "Again, traveler, you have an eye for something rare. Yes? Look here, a survivor, a beauty untouched by time." The human did not answer. His gaze stayed on the girl. She felt his eyes like fire, not cruel, but sharp for the first time. Someone was not looking at her with pity or hate. The crowd grew. Restless, some laughed again. No one would buy her, they shouted. Even a human cannot be so foolish. The trader forced a grin. She is cheap, very cheap. Take her, and you will see. She can serve, she can obey. But still the human said nothing. The girl's heart beat faster. Her hands shook against the bars. Was he really going to take her? Or was he like the others, only here to stare? A gust of hot wind rushed through the market, carrying dust and the smell of fire. The human finally spoke, his voice low, steady. "I will take her," he said. The crowd exploded with laughter. Louder than before. "Madness," they cried. "Humans are fools. She will bring him no profit, only trouble." But the trader did not laugh. His greedy eyes widened. "As you wish, human, as you wish. But do not say, I did not warn you." The girl's breath caught in her throat. She could not understand. She could not believe it. He had chosen her when no one else would. Her cage was unlocked. The bars creaked as they swung open. For a moment, she did not move, her body frozen. Until the human held out his hand, steady and patient. The market watched in silence as she stepped forward. The dust rose around her bare feet, her head still bowed. But something in her chest shifted. A spark. She had been abandoned, mocked, left without worth. But this human, this stranger, had seen something others did not. The market of shadows had given her no hope. But with one choice, the story had changed, and for the first time in her life, she wondered, what does he see in me that no one else can? The girl walked out of the cage, her legs trembling, her body weak. The hot ground burned her bare feet, and the crowd whispered louder. Every eye followed her as she moved closer to the human. The trader smirked, happy to take the coins, but the other aliens only laughed. To waste money on this one, they sneered. Only a human would do such a thing. The human did not answer them. His silence was heavier than any word. He took a simple cloth from his pack and placed it around the girl's shoulders. It was rough and plain, but to her, it felt like armor. For the first time in her memory, she was covered. She was not only a slave to be mocked. The cloak smelled of leather and dust, of long roads and faraway places. Her fingers clutched it tightly, afraid it might be taken away. The human turned and began to walk, his steps calm and steady. The girl followed, still weak, still trembling. But something inside her pushed her forward. The market noise slowly faded behind them. The jeers and laughter grew faint, until they were only echoes. Ahead lay the edge of the city, a gate of iron and stone. Beyond it stretched the desert, endless glowing red under the fading sun. As they walked, the girl looked up at him. He was taller than any alien she had seen, his shoulders broad, his stride powerful. Yet there was no cruelty in him, no pride, no need to show his strength. There was only purpose. She dared to speak. Her voice cracked from thirst. "Why?" she whispered. "Why me?" The human did not answer at once. He kept walking, his boots pressing dust into the ground. Finally, he said, his voice low, because no one else would. The words struck her like thunder, simple but heavy. She wanted to ask more, but her throat was dry, her body weak, so she followed in silence, her mind burning with questions. Night fell quickly in the desert. The sky turned black, filled with stars brighter than she had ever seen. The human stopped and set down his pack. From it, he drew a small device, pressed it, and a fire sparked to life. Warmth spread through the cold desert air. The girl sat near the fire, shivering, wrapping the cloak tighter. The human handed her a flask of water. She hesitated, afraid it might be a trick. But his eyes were steady, his hand firm. At last, she drank, the water cool, life returning to her veins. She coughed, then drank again, as if she had never tasted water before. When she finished, she whispered, "Thank you." The human only nodded. Silent as the stars above them, the firelight lit his face. It was a strong face, carved by years of travel and struggle. His eyes were sharp, but not cruel. They watched everything, measuring, calculating. She felt as if nothing escaped him, as if he carried secrets she could not imagine. At last, she dared to ask again, her voice small. "Why do you care? I am nothing. I am worthless." The human's gaze turned to her, his eyes dark in the firelight. "No one is worthless," he said. Not while they still breathe. The words sank deep into her heart. No one had ever spoken to her that way. To others, she had always been a slave, a burden, a mistake. But to him, she was something else, something more. The desert wind howled. Across the sand, but near the fire, there was peace. She lay down, the cloak wrapped around her, her body finally resting. Her mind spun with questions, but her eyes closed. For the first time in years, she slept without fear. The human sat awake, his eyes on the fire. He did not sleep. He only watched, silent, as if he expected danger at any moment. His hand rested near his weapon, his ears sharp to every sound. He looked at the girl once, her face calm in sleep and in his heart. There was something unspoken, a promise. The night passed slowly, the stars moving across the sky like silent watchers. When the dawn came, the fire burned low, the human rose, stamping the ashes, and packed his things. He woke the girl gently, and she stirred, rubbing her eyes. Her body was still weak, but her spirit felt lighter, as if the chains of the cage were already fading. Together, they began walking deeper into the desert. The sun rose, turning the sand into rivers of gold. She asked no more questions, but she felt them burning inside her. Who was this human? Why? Had he saved her? What did he want? But she knew one thing. As her bare feet touched the warm sand, she was no longer alone behind them. In the market of shadows, the whispers still spread. The story of a human who had bought the worthless girl. Some laughed, calling him a fool, but others, the wise ones, spoke in hushed voices. If a human has chosen her, then perhaps she is not worthless at all. And so the journey began. Not of slave and master, but of something stranger, something deeper. The girl did not know it yet, but the human had changed her fate forever. The desert morning was sharp and cold. The wind cut across the dunes like a blade. Carrying sand that stung the skin, the human walked ahead with steady steps while the girl followed close behind. Her cloak pressed tightly to her body. She was weak, but each step away from the market felt like a step away from death. Her mind was full of questions. Why had he chosen her? Why had he given her water? Why had he given her a cloak when no one else had given her even a glance? She wanted to ask, but her voice was trapped in her throat. She feared that if she spoke, he might turn cold, or worse, leave her behind. As the sun climbed, they reached a caravan road. It was filled with traders, hunters, and strange machines rolling on iron wheels. The noise of voices rose again, almost like the market they had left. The girl shrank back, pulling the cloak tighter, but the human did not slow. He walked through the crowd as if he were a shadow. His eyes sharp, his presence strong. Whispers rose again, a human. Someone muttered, "What is he doing here?" Another voice sneered, and look what follows him, a useless slave girl. Laughter broke out, cruel and sharp, but the human did not turn. The girl's hands trembled. Shame burned in her chest. She wanted to vanish, to melt into the sand. But still she followed. The road opened into a rest camp. Stalls of food, weapons, and cloth stood around a great fire pit. Travelers sat in groups, drinking and laughing. As the human and the girl entered, silence spread. Eyes turned, mouths whispered. It was the same feeling as the market, but stronger, heavier. A tall alien with scales like polished stone stood. His armor was black, his blade long. He pointed at the girl and laughed. So this is what the human buys. He shouted, a slave that no one else wanted. The camp erupted with laughter. The girl lowered her head, tears burning in her eyes. She thought the human would stay silent again. But this time, he spoke. His voice was steady, calm, but carried like thunder. She is not worthless, he said. The laughter stopped at once. The crowd stared, their eyes wide. Even the tall warrior blinked, his grin fading. The humans. Words were not loud, but they were heavy. They hung in the air like a stone too large to move. The girl looked at him, her heart pounding. He had said it in front of them all. He had chosen to defend her when no one else would. The warrior spat. On the ground, big words for a human, he hissed. But words mean nothing. He drew his blade, the steel catching the light of the sun. Prove it, he growled. Prove she is worth more than dust. The camp roared with excitement. A fight, a duel, blood to break the silence. The girl gasped. Fear filling her chest. Would he fight for her? Would he risk his life? The human? Stepped forward slowly, his coat shifting in the wind. But he did not draw his weapon. He stood tall, calm, his eyes locked on the warrior. I do not need to prove it to you, he said. She is not yours to judge. The words were sharper than any blade. The crowd froze, confused. The warrior snarled, raising his weapon higher, but something in the human's eyes made him stop. It was not fear, it was not weakness, it was something deeper, something dangerous. The warrior's hand trembled. Though he tried to hide it, the camp fell silent again. No one laughed, no one spoke. The human's calm was stronger than their anger. Slowly, the warrior lowered his blade. His pride wounded, he turned away with a growl. And the moment ended, the girl could not breathe. Her chest rose and fell as if she had run for miles. He had stood for her, in front of them all, not with force, but with will. Her hands shook as she whispered, "Why?" The human looked down at her, his eyes steady. "Because you are more than they see," he said. The words pierced her heart. Tears ran down her cheeks, but not from shame. They were from something she had never felt before. Hope. The crowd slowly returned to their business. But whispers followed. A human who defends a slave, they muttered. Strange, dangerous, yet others, the quiet ones, said something else. Perhaps she is not what she seems. As the sun dipped lower, the human and the girl left the camp. They walked back into the desert, leaving the noise behind. The girl followed close, her mind burning. He had defended her, spoken for her. No one had ever done that. And she knew, in that moment, her life was no longer her own. It was something new, something unknown. The desert stretched ahead, endless and golden. And though she was afraid, her steps were stronger now, because for the first time, she was walking toward a future she could not yet see, but it was hers. The desert stretched like an ocean of gold. Waves of sand rolled endlessly. Glowing under the morning sun, the human walked at the front, his coat brushing against the wind. The girl followed close, her bare feet pressing into the hot sand. The cloak wrapped tightly around her. Every step was heavy. But lighter than the chains she once carried, the silence between them was deep, broken only by the sound of wind. She wanted to speak, to ask who he really was. But fear held her tongue. Instead, she watched him, studied him, the way his eyes never rested in one place, always searching, always alert, the way his steps were steady, as if no storm could move him. At last, he slowed his pace, he turned slightly. His voice calm. "You need rest," he said. She nodded quickly, her legs aching. They stopped by a cluster of tall rocks rising from the sand. The human sat down his pack and began to build a small shade with cloth and poles. He worked with quiet skill, his hands moving with purpose. Within minutes, a shelter stood. Casting a cool shadow, the girl sat beneath it, her body trembling with exhaustion. The human handed her a piece of dried bread and a flask of water. She ate slowly, each bite like stone. But she forced herself. Her eyes lifted to him, filled with curiosity. "Why do you help me?" she whispered, her voice barely rising above the wind. He paused, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Finally, he said, "Because once, my people were slaves too." Her breath caught. "Humans," she whispered. "Slaves," he nodded, his gaze still far away. "Long ago, before we stood as we do now, before we reached the stars, others held chains on us. They believed we were weak. They were wrong. The words struck her deeply for the first time. She saw him not as a stranger, but as something more. Someone who carried the memory of suffering, someone who understood. Her eyes lowered. Her fingers tightening on the cloak. "I do not even have a name anymore," she said softly. "They took it from me." The human turned to her, then his. Eyes sharp yet kind. "Then we will find you a new one," he said. She blinked, confused. "A new name?" "Yes," he answered. "Your name is not what they gave. It is what you choose." Her lips parted, but no words came. The thought was strange, impossible, yet beautiful. To choose, to belong, to be more than a slave. The heat of the day passed, and they set out again. The sand burned brighter. But the human never slowed. She stumbled, but each time she fell. He lifted her with patience. No anger, no harshness, only steady strength. It was a strength she began to trust, even as fear clung to her heart. By evening, they reached another camp, a small place of wandering merchants. Fires burned, food roasted. Voices rose in the fading light as they entered. The same whispers followed. A human voices said, and a slave girl with him. Some laughed, others frowned. But the human walked as though none of it mattered. They found a place near the edge, away from the noise. The human set the fire. While the girl sat wrapped in her cloak, she watched the sparks rise into the night sky. Her eyes lifted to the stars, millions shining like diamonds. Her people were gone. Her world lost, but the stars remained. Perhaps, she thought, they held answers. Perhaps they held hope. The human placed a small bowl of stew before her. She hesitated, then ate, the warmth spreading through her. He ate in silence, his eyes steady on the fire. Finally, she whispered, "What is your name?" He looked at her, his face calm. "My name does not matter," he said. "Not yet." Her eyes widened, puzzled. "But why?" "Because names have power," he answered, "and power must be given carefully." She fell silent, but the mystery deepened in her heart. This man was unlike anyone she had ever seen. He carried pain, strength, and secrets, yet he had chosen her when no one else would. That night, as the camp slept, the girl awoke. The fire was low. The desert wind soft. She turned and saw the human, sitting still, awake. His eyes scanned the shadows, his hand near his weapon. He did not rest, not fully. He kept watch, for her tears filled her eyes. But not of sorrow. They were tears of something new. For the first time in her life, someone was protecting her. Not for profit, not for power, but simply because, when dawn came, the desert burned gold once more. The human rose and packed his things. The girl stood, stronger than before. Though still uncertain, together they walked again into the endless sands. The journey had only begun, but with every step, she felt a strange truth rising inside her. She was no longer a slave walking to nowhere. She was someone walking toward something, something greater. The desert night was cold, colder than stone. The girl sat close to the fire. Her cloak pulled tight, her eyes fixed on the flames. The human sat across from her, silent, his shadow long against the sand. The stars above burned bright, watching. Like silent eyes, for a long time, neither spoke. Only the fire crackled between them, at last. The girl's voice broke the silence, soft but trembling. "You could have left me in that cage." She whispered, "You could have walked away." Like all the others, the human did not move, his eyes still on the fire. Finally, he said, "I told you before, humans remember what it means to be in chains." Her brow furrowed, her curiosity deep. "What do you mean?" she asked. The human lifted his gaze to the stars. "Long ago, before humans reached the stars, before our ships flew across the galaxy, we were weak. We were divided. Stronger races enslaved us. They thought we were nothing, But they were wrong. His voice grew firmer, each word carrying weight. We fought, we broke our chains, we built our freedom with blood and fire, and we swore never to forget, never to let others suffer alone. That is why I took you. The girl stared at him, her heart pounding. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever compared her suffering to their own. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "But I am not strong. I am broken." The human leaned closer, his eyes sharp as steel. "You are not broken," he said. "You are untested." The words struck her deeper than the desert cold. She wrapped the cloak tighter, her mind spinning. Could it be true? Could strength still hide within her? The human pulled a small object from his pack, a simple wooden stick. He handed it to her. "Hold this," he said. Her hands trembled as she took it. Confused, "It is only wood," she murmured. "It is enough," he replied. He stood and walked a few steps away. "Now," he said, "strike." Her eyes widened. "Strike," she repeated. Shocked, "Yes," he nodded. "Hit me." Her hands shook, fear rising in her chest. "I cannot," she whispered. "You can." His voice was firm. "Fear is the first chain. Break it." She raised the stick slowly. Her arms weak, with all her strength, she swung. The human moved like the wind, catching the stick with his hand before it touched him. Her eyes widened in shock. Again, he said, "Strike." Again, she swung. Again, he stopped it. Over and over, she struck. Her arms growing heavy, her chest burning, but each time he caught it, each time he pushed her harder, until her body trembled with exhaustion, and the stick fell from her hands. She collapsed to her knees, gasping. Tears filled her eyes. But not of shame. They were of anger, of fire rising within. The human bent down, his voice steady. "Good," he said. "You are learning, learning," she gasped. "I failed." "No," he shook his head. "You tried, and that is more than you believed you could. Tomorrow, you will try again and again, until you see the strength I already see." Her heart thundered. Could she truly become more? Could she truly fight? She looked at his face, calm but unyielding, and she felt something she had never felt before. Trust. The night stretched on, but she could not sleep. Her mind replayed his words, his movements, his strength. He was not only her savior, he was her teacher. He carried secrets deeper than the stars. Secrets of survival, of freedom. She wanted to know them all. When dawn came, he rose before the sun. He trained her again, with the stick, with her body, with her voice. Each time she failed, he corrected her. Each time she fell, he lifted her slowly. She began to feel it, the fire inside, the power she had thought long dead, as they traveled. He told her more, of Earth, a world of oceans and mountains, of storms and forests, of wars fought and won, of chains broken. "Humans are not the strongest," he said, "not the fastest, not the largest, but we endure, we fight, we rise." She listened, wide-eyed, every word carving itself into her heart. At night, by the fire, he taught her to speak in human tongue. She stumbled, but he corrected her with patience. Her voice grew clearer, her words stronger. He taught her to hold tools, to build small shelters, to use fire without fear. Slowly, she became more than a survivor. She became a student. The whispers of the desert followed them. Rumors spread from camp to camp. The human who had taken the unwanted slave. The girl who now trained under his shadow. Some laughed, calling it foolish, but others watched with quiet interest. For they knew that when humans trained, it was never without purpose. One night, as the fire burned low, she dared to ask, "What are you preparing me for?" The human looked at her, his eyes sharp, his silence heavy. Finally, he said, "The galaxy is cruel, and it will test you again. You must be ready." Her breath caught. "Ready for what?" she whispered. "For the day they come for you," he answered. The words sent a shiver down her spine. Who were they? Why would they come? She wanted to ask more, but his gaze told her he would not answer yet. She pulled the cloak tighter. Her heart pounding, the fire crackled, the stars burned above. And in her chest, fear mixed with something new, anticipation. The human secrets were many, but one truth was clear. He was preparing her, shaping her, not as a slave, but as something far greater. The desert days grew longer, the nights colder. The girl's body grew stronger with each step, her arms more steady with each swing of the wooden stick. Her voice, once trembling, now carried clearer words, taught by the human's calm lessons. But as she grew, so too did the whispers. Rumors spread from camp to camp, from trader to hunter. They spoke of a human who had taken a slave no one wanted. They spoke of a girl who trained under his watch. And in the galaxy, rumors are dangerous. They travel faster than ships, faster than light, until they reach ears that should never have heard them. One night, as the fire burned low, the girl sat close, her body aching from training. The human's eyes were on the horizon, sharp, unblinking. At last, he said, "They know." The girl turned, confused. "Who?" she whispered. "The ones who took your people." His voice was low, steady. Her chest tightened, fear rushing through her. "They will come," he added. "They will want you back." Her hands shook, clutching the cloak around her. "Why me?" she asked. "I am nothing to them." His gaze darkened. "You are not nothing. You are the last. And that makes you dangerous." "They fear what survives," the words echoed in her heart. Heavy as stone, the night felt colder, the stars sharper. She looked at him, her voice trembling. "Will you leave me?" When they come, his eyes turned to her. Sharp but certain. "No," he said. "I chose you, and I will not abandon what I chose." The days that followed grew tense. The human pushed her harder, faster. She trained until her arms could barely lift, until her legs gave out. Each time she fell, he lifted her. Each time she cried, he reminded her, strength is not in never falling, it is in rising again. But the danger drew closer. At camps, they felt the eyes of strangers watching too long. At markets, silence spread when they entered. The air was heavy with suspicion, with whispers that never reached their ears. And one evening, when the sun bled into the dunes, they saw it on the horizon. A black shape moved. At first, it was only a shadow, but as it drew near, it became many ships hovering low, their engines humming like thunder. The girl's heart pounded, fear choking her. "They found us," she whispered. The human's eyes narrowed, his hand resting near his weapon. "Yes," he said, "and they will not stop." The ships landed, throwing sand into the air. From them stepped hunters, armored and cruel, their faces hidden behind masks. Their voices rang out, sharp and cold. "Give her to us, human. She belongs to us." The girl froze, her legs trembling. She wanted to run, but her body would not move. The human stepped forward, calm. "She belongs to no one," he said. Laughter broke from the hunters, harsh and cruel. "You are alone, human." "What? You cannot fight us all." "But..." His eyes did not waver. "I am never alone," he answered. Glancing at the girl, her breath caught. Did he mean her? Could she fight? The stick in her hand felt small, weak, but his words burned inside her. "I am never alone." The hunters advanced, their weapons glowing with fire. The girl's fear rose like a storm, but so did something else, a spark deep in her chest. The same spark she had felt when he trained her, her people had once been. Strong, she remembered now. They had power, hidden, buried, but alive. The first hunter lunged. The girl raised the stick without thinking. Light burst from her hands, a force she did not understand. The hunter flew back, crashing into the sand. Silence fell. Her chest heaved, her hands shook, but her eyes burned with fire. The hunters stared in shock. The human's lips curved. Not in surprise, but in quiet knowing. "She is not yours," he said again. The hunters roared with anger, charging forward. The girl and the human stood side by side. The battle began, the desert lit with fire and steel. The human moved like a storm, his weapon flashing, his body steady. The girl stumbled, but each time she lifted the stick, the strange power returned. Blasts of light burst forth. Striking the hunters down, she did not understand it. But she did not stop, for the first time. She was fighting, not to survive, but to protect. At last, the hunters fell back, their leader growling. "This is not the end. Human, she is ours. And we will return." The ships rose, vanishing into the sky. The desert fell silent again. Only the girl's heavy breathing and the human's calm steps remained. She collapsed to her knees, trembling. What is happening to me?" she whispered. The human stood over her, his eyes calm but serious. "You are becoming who you were always meant to be," he said. Her tears fell, her body shaking. She was afraid of herself, of the power inside. But she was no longer afraid of being worthless, because now she knew she was not nothing. She was dangerous. The desert was quiet again, too quiet. The hunters were gone. Their ships vanished into the night sky, but their threat still lingered in the air. The girl sat on the sand, her body trembling, her hands glowing faint with the strange light she had released. Her heart raced, her breath uneven. She whispered, "What am I?" The human stood near, his weapon still in hand, his eyes calm. "You are the last of your kind," he said, "but not the weakest." She shook her head, tears falling. "No, I am afraid. I cannot control it. I cannot be what they fear." His voice grew firmer, steady as stone. "Fear does not make you weak. Fear shows you have something to protect." The girl stared at him, her mind torn. For so long she had believed she was nothing, only a slave, only a burden. But now she had seen her power. She had felt it. And she knew the hunters would return. Not just for her, but for the strength inside her. Days passed as they traveled further into the desert. The girl trained harder, learning to hold the light in her hands. Sometimes it came as fire, sometimes as force. It frightened her. But the human never wavered. He stood at her side, guiding, correcting, pushing, until slowly she began to shape. It not perfectly, but enough. One night, as the fire burned low, she turned to him. "Why do you help me so much?" she asked. "What am I to you?" The human looked at her, his face lit by flame. "You are a reminder," he said. "Of what?" she whispered. "Of what humans swore long ago, that no one should be left in chains, that no one should stand alone." Her chest ached, her eyes filled with tears. No one had ever spoken of her like that. No one had ever said she was worth protecting, worth saving. She looked down, her voice breaking. "I thought I was worthless, but you? You see something else." The human nodded. "I see what you will become," he said. "And one day, so will you." The desert winds carried change. Whispers spread across the galaxy. Not only of the human who had taken a slave, but of the girl who was no longer weak, no longer silent, and the hunters heard. And they came again. This time, they brought many. Their ships filled the horizon, their banners black against the stars. The girl stood beside the human, her hands trembling, but her eyes sharp. She was afraid, but she was no longer broken. The human glanced at her, his voice calm. "Are you ready?" She swallowed, then nodded. Yes. The battle came swift. fire raining from the sky. The hunters charged, their weapons glowing. The human fought with skill and fury, his blade cutting through steel and shadow. But this time, the girl did not hide. Her power burst forth, a storm of light and force. It struck the hunters, throwing them back. Shaking the ground, she cried out, not in fear, but in strength. For the first time, she was not a victim. She was a fighter. The hunters pressed harder, but together, they held the line. The human strikes were precise, her power wild but growing. Side by side, they stood, until at last the hunters faltered. Their leader falling to the sand, his voice a hiss. She is dangerous. She will bring ruin. The human stood tall, his blade at his side. She is not ruin, he said. She is hope. The hunters fled, their ships lifting into the sky once more. The desert fell silent. Only the crackle of fire and the beating of her heart remained. The girl collapsed to her knees, her body weak, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had done it. She had fought. She had survived. Tears ran down her face. But they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of freedom. The human walked to her, steady, calm. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You see now, he said. You were never worthless. Her lips trembled, her voice a whisper. What? Am I then? His eyes softened. You are free, he said. And freedom is worth more than any chain, any market, any crown. She looked at him. Her heart filled with something she could not name. Trust, hope, fire. She was no longer the girl in the cage. No longer the one mocked and abandoned. She was the last of her kind, but not the end. With the human beside her, she was the beginning of something greater. The desert winds howled, carrying their story into the stars. The galaxy would remember. The day a human chose the one no one else would. The day a slave girl became more than chains. The day she rose, not alone, but with a friend, a teacher, a protector. And though her path was uncertain, one truth was clear. No one would buy her. No one would claim her, because she belonged only to herself now, and the universe would learn her name.